Hello everybody! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan. I'm a Mood Read Queen, and today we're doing a different kind of wrap-up video because I have attempted a few different things recently, and they were not super successful. So if you watched my October wrap-up, you know it was like crazy long. So I've been a little absent. I have a video that I've been working on editing, but I thought I would do a little wrap up slash life update in this video because I've been doing I think a good job in keeping up with the schedule of my channel, but this month in October, it's just been really difficult with my grad classes and stuff. So what I thought I would do today is kind of go general life update, how's life going, how's reading going, kind of vloggy, I don't really know. And then I'm going to talk about the 6 books that I've read so far. It's a little, at this point, a little less than half the month, but I still feel like that's pretty good. And I've got 6 books to talk about today, which is so exciting. So November has been a great month for reading. I don't know if it's been a great month for mental health. So settle in, because I don't know how long this video is going to be. I mean, maybe half an hour. I don't know, guys. You never know. You never know with me, right? So anyway, what's been going on? Well, so I've got, if you're in school right now, whatever, I know I have some people who watch these videos. I know it's weird to say that, but I know people watch these. I mean, not that many people do, but some people do. So I know that people are in various stages of education. Some people are done with school. Some people are in high school or college or working on a master's or something. I am working on my master's, and I waited to go back to school because I wasn't sure what I wanted first. And then also I thought maybe it would get easier, I don't know, maybe I was stupid, but I thought that if I waited and taught for a little bit longer, that life would be easier and I would just it'd be easier to go back to school. And then I realized that that's not the case. And so I just went back to school anyway. So I've been back in school for over a year now, and I will tentatively graduate in May of 2023. I'm not quite sure yet. And I'm in 2 classes right now, and that was not the plan. Here, I'm going to keep you guys a little bit closer because this will go. There we go. That was not the plan originally. The plan was to be in 1 class that I took specifically because it was a literature class, the one that I've talked about on here. It's British literature and the democracy in the 19th century, which is actually more interesting than I anticipated, but still not my thing. And then I'm also in a class that's more for English ed majors, and that class is just for kicks. I needed 6 hours, I'm taking it, right? So both of those classes have ramped up in the last couple weeks, and so I've got papers due and rough drafts, and I've got piles of printed materials to read, and things I'm interested in, but I just don't have the mental capacity right now for all of this. And so I've been wanting, I have so many ideas. If I were to show you, you would see a huge long list of book ideas. And they are things I feel like I'll be able to get to soon. My classes have their finals on December 12th. So after that, I feel like I'll be a little better. But it's just been one of those, the last month and a half or so, it's been really rough. And I've read a lot of good books, but I haven't had time to really plan anything that I wanted to share, except for my Wichita trip, which I've started editing the video, but I don't think it's going to go up until, I want to say Wednesday. I just don't know, because I just have so much going on. So I'm going to try. We'll see. It'll be coming up hopefully in the next week or so, because I have a whole haul to show you and stuff like that. So We'll get there, but I'm like doggy paddling to like stay afloat, and I don't know if it's working. And sometimes the water level rises and I start to drown a little bit. So anyway, we'll figure it out, I guess. I don't really know. I don't know. I've like randomly started crying listening to an audiobook this week, so I think that says a lot about my mental state, probably. So there's that. Let's talk about the books I read so far this month. So first book I finished this month was, let me make sure I get this in order for you. Not that really matters. Okay, so I pre-ordered, and God, this lighting, one day I will have really great lighting, but today is not that day. This is, I think we're just supposed to call it, like, I don't know if we're calling it love. I don't know if it's spelled Lvoe. Anyway, but it's by Atticus. I love poetry collections. I write poetry collections. And I've always just really enjoyed poetry. And so when I started writing my own collection in 2019, I think, I just started reading more poetry again because it had been a long time. And so I've read quite a few, like I have all sorts of poetry collections, and honestly, that would be a really good video to do. Note to self, favorite poetry collections and why I like them. Because like every poet, like there are people who think they're great, there are people who think they're overrated, there are people who think it's not even poetry. I wrote a whole paper this summer. I was in a poetry class called Contemporary American Poetry, which we think contemporary, and I think like today, but it was really talking about the contemporary poetry movement and kind of how that's so technically today we're kind of like in a non-contemporary post something. But it was interesting, kinda. I mean, the guy who taught it like had these audio lectures, and it was just like he just read the notes that he like posted on Blackboard. It was like kind of boring. But for my paper topic, I chose to write about how Insta poetry or social media poetry, because I post my stuff online, but mine isn't really meant for that medium. My poems are too long for that, so I end up having to kind of pick selections or do multiple pictures, and it's kind of a pain, and I have been really bad about updating those. But anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, how Insta poetry is like kind of like an extension of contemporary poetry, because the whole goal of contemporary poetry when people were starting to write it in like the, I don't know, 40s, 50s, 60s, was to kind of bring poetry back to the people, like reclaim it as something that was accessible and not like elitist, like T.S. Eliot tried to make it. And so anyway, I focused on, it was supposed to be a contemporary American poetry, but I accidentally ended up like focusing on like Canadian poets. I just hope he didn't figure that out. He gave me 100% on this paper, but I don't think he actually read it. So, don't you hate that? Oh my God. It drives me nuts. So anyway, Atticus, this is his fourth book, and some people really like Atticus, some people really don't like Atticus. I really like most of the stuff that he does, mostly because I think that a lot of most poetry today that I read is very relatable. And even if you don't relate 100% to every single poem, like I didn't relate to every single poem in here, but there were ones I really liked. And I think that is probably my favorite collection so far that I read of his. I've been following him now for like a couple of years, maybe. Low-key have a gigantor crush, but like he's an anonymous dude who's like, I don't know, independently wealthy or whatever. Like, I was reading the back of this book. Was it the back of this book? No, it was in a post on Instagram, like yesterday or something. And it was like reintroducing himself to like new followers. And it was like a top 10 list of things to know about him. And one of them was like he invested in some companies when he was younger. So technically he doesn't have to work. And I was like, dude, not fair. But anyway, so this book I don't know what we're calling it. Love, LVOE, whatever. It's kind of hard to talk about poetry collections, but I really like it. It has... Oops, there's a note that someone gave me that I was using as a bookmark. So it's about like it's called LVOE because love is imperfect, but it's still beautiful, which I think that's nice. I mean, maybe it's cliche, but I'm a romantic, so sorry. So there are like several sections. So you have her, love, wonder, soul, and cuddle. And so some of them are like I found more relatable to where I'm at in my life, but others are people who like, you know, maybe more relatable to someone who is like in an established relationship, for an example. But I just thought it was beautiful. And if you like, and the poems are all very short. There are a couple longer ones, which I like. I know because he started posting on Instagram when he started writing, his poems are typically shorter. But I do like reading some of his longer works as well. I'd be interested one day of him like actually taking like writing like having a larger collection. There's also some really cool art in here that was made by a tattoo artist. And every piece was inspired by a real tattoo. So it's like cool sketches, which I think that's why I like this one the best out of all the collections so far, because the other collections had pictures. And I liked this better. So I gave it 5 stars. I really liked it. It made me cry a little bit, but I'm not mentally stable right now, so you never really know what's gonna make you cry. Like sometimes you're like reading a book in your kitchen, listen to an audiobook and start crying for no reason, you know? So sometimes that happens on a Friday night. Yeah. Anywho, I recommend. I will consider, if you're interested, let me know. Would you like me to do like poetry collections I recommend? Because there's a lot of poets that I really like, poets I relate to more than others. They're mostly contemporary poets, although I do like a lot of poetry. So I don't know. I'd check it out if you like poetry. If you've never read Atticus before, they're kind of, I mean, each collection sort of relates to each other, but I read them out of order. So like I read the second one. I think I read the second one first, then the first one, then the third one, then the fourth one. So anyway, I recommend. I like it. I don't have much to say there, honestly. Sorry. I guess I could read. I didn't mark any of the ones I went through. Like, I probably should have marked some ones that I thought were like, ooh, that hurt me. Okay. Then the second book I finished is The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. And I read this for my grad class. I'm not sure. I never know what these Penguin Classic covers are doing. Like, what is this? There's a boat. There's some chicks on a rock. I don't know if this means anything. But maybe there's like a reason behind it. So, a little bit of background. So, I'd read Wilkie Collins in my undergrad, The Woman in White. This book came out in 1868. And T.S. Eliot, who I mentioned earlier, so what do you know? Connections. Called this the first, the longest, and the best of modern English detective novels. So this, I don't know if we all agree, that this is like the beginning of like the modern detective novel, but I really liked this book. So a little bit of background on it. It is a book told in several parts. So you've got a prologue, which I'm not gonna lie, I forgot the prologue until much later. I mean, I read it, but I forgot. And then we have 2 periods. So the first period is a pretty huge chunk of the book, almost half, and it's every section of the book is like told by another person. So basically, this diamond goes missing, and it's called is it the diamond? Yeah, it's called the Moonstone. Excuse me, and it goes missing in 1848. And so, Gabriel Betteridge, who is the house steward, kind of butler of this woman named Lady Verinder, he starts telling us the story, and he gives us like way too much information. He's like this old guy in his like 70s who loves Robinson Crusoe, like is in love with Robinson Crusoe. He uses it as like his Bible. He quotes it all the time. He loves like smoking his pipe and talking about Robinson Crusoe. And I honestly, he was a bit handsy, okay, but with the maids a couple times. But I actually really like him, and so he goes for about half the book, and then we go into the second period, which is then divided into several other people's perspectives, and they basically pass the story along, telling us how they were involved with the Moonstone or what happened to the Moonstone. Where's it at? And so we get like another series of narratives from 1848 to 1849, and some of them are from like lawyers. Some of them are from like potential romantic partners to people in the story, doctors, and different people like that who were involved. And it is interesting because there's no like formula for the detective novel at this time that I'm aware of. And so you're watching it and you're watching it. I was listening to it. And the guy who does it on Audible, Peter Jeffrey, I think, highly recommend listening to it, honestly. It was really good. He does a good job with the characters' voices. And so it's like there's this woman who inherits the Moonstone from her uncle, and she keeps it, like, you know, she should. And then it goes missing, and we have to figure out what happened to the Moonstone, who took it, who's at fault, who's lying about that or other things. And it's like literally like this whole long narrative trying to figure out what happened to it. And you have like Gabriel Betteridge, who is just like waxing poetic about Robinson Crusoe, and then talking about how much he loves Miss Rachel, who is the daughter of Lady Verinder. And Rachel was the one who inherited the diamond for her birthday from her uncle who died. She has a will they won't they thing going on with this guy named Franklin Blake. We're not sure about Franklin Blake for a while. There's this maid named Rosanna who has like an enlarged shoulder, like hunch thing going on. I'm not really sure. Gabriel does not do a very good job talking about it. But she is kind of in love with Franklin Blake. But Franklin Blake isn't paying attention to her because he's paying attention to Rachel. And you've got like another guy who's like a cousin of Rachel who likes her, named Godfrey Ablewhite. And then you've got, you know, like a Sergeant Cuff who's trying to figure out what actually happened. And Gabriel Betteridge is like trying to do his detectiving because he wants to know too. And like Rachel's suspected of stealing her own diamond because she was in debt. Is she in debt? Can't really prove that. And it's just, I actually really liked it. I give it 4 stars, I think. I read the Lady in White, like actually read the Lady in White in undergrad. And I read everything almost in undergrad, except for like a few things here and there. Shakespeare I would like watch and read at the same time. But then grad school, I just have not had the same stamina and the same focus and the same motivation. I just can't, right? Because I work 2 jobs and I do this and I have an Instagram and I write poetry and whatever. It's great. I have a great life, but it's been rough recently. And there's no way I was going to just pick up this book and just read it, right? Just like the Felix Holt one that I talked about last month that I actually ended up really liking too. I liked it. And there's like probably a lot of interesting things we can say about it in terms of it being like potentially a political work, even though it doesn't feel like it's a political work, because that's what this class is about, is talking about like politics and like stuff like that. So anyway, I liked it a lot. I don't know if that helped anybody. If you like classic books or maybe you're not a fan of classic books, but you like mysteries and you're like, well, I want to try to like read more classics, you might check it out. It's pretty good. It's pretty funny. I mean, it's situational humor and kind of time humor as well. Like, you're like, there's some parody stuff going on, and also it's funny for us reading it now, because you're like, wait, did that just, what? Like, there's this lady named Miss Clack, who is a relative, a very religious sort of zealot, and she has all these religious pamphlets, and she's trying to save everyone. So she just like starts putting all these pamphlets around the house in hopes that her aunt, who is sick, will read them and be saved. And it's hilarious. It's so funny. So I actually really like this a lot, and I'd recommend it, which I don't say often about some stuff. Okay, the next book I read, let me maneuver a tad here. Okay, so the next book I read was The Pride of Garnet Run by Roan Parrish. So what is happening back there? Oh, my charger. So I love Roan Parrish. I did a whole video in July, talking about how much I love Roan Parrish. And Garnet Run was the first series I read by her. If you don't know who Roan Parrish is, I would check out that video. I think I actually do a pretty good job talking about her work. But she writes like queer fiction, queer romances, but they somehow, it's so hard to explain because, yeah, there's like spicy stuff, but they're also so like down to earth and grounded and human and relatable. And I've cried in so many of them. Like literally last night I was listening to the newest one, which I haven't finished it yet, so I'll talk about it at the end of the month. But it was The Rivals of Casper Road is the last one in the series, even though Roan Parrish, I need a book about River. River's a character in the series, and River's been there since book 2, and I need a book about River. So, I'm just gonna harass her on Instagram. We've spoken a few times on there. Like good conversations. Like I literally died when she responded to one of my things. But anyway, The Pride of Garnet Run actually happens between, I think, books 2 and 3, but it came out after book 3, and it's about Henry, and this is like super short, so it's about Henry and Cameron, and excuse me, I'm still getting over being sick. The series is about all these men in Garnet Run, which is a surprisingly queer community, and so you get to see all these characters again. But Henry comes to Garnet Run to restore it doesn't say the name of the theater. I don't know. There's an old historic theater in Garnet Run, and he came to restore it after like getting money to do it, or like it's protected as a historical site. And so he starts restoring it, and he meets Cameron at the coffee shop. Cameron is a barista, and it's a really sweet short story. It's like 66 pages, but it's cute because it's like introducing you back into Garnet Run, and I didn't care. I mean, I really wanted River's story, and so I was like, okay, show me these new people. Okay. But they're not in books. I don't think Henry and Cameron are in book 3 that I recall, but they are in book 4. And so it's really sweet. It was like, I gave it 3 stars, I think, because it was too short, and when you read a longer Roan Parrish book, you realize all the awesome stuff she's able to do, even if it's like still like less than 300 pages. And this was like only like 66 pages. And I was like, Roan Parrish, I think it could have been a full book, and I would have loved that. So, it was really cute, but it was just short, and I would have really liked to have seen the development of the characters, and the development of their relationship more, and because it goes by pretty quick, and there's not a lot of scenes that I wanted to see. And then at the end, I was talking to my friend Jen about this. She texted me and she's like, she goes, it was really cute, but I just hate that books that don't understand how education works. And I was like, elaborate, please. And so we were talking, and she was like, well, in this book, like, people are always like, oh, you should teach this, or you should do this. And it's like, she's like, do they have teacher education or like teacher certification in other states? How does that work? And I was like, you're right. Because I've read books before, and this, it does happen, spoiler alert, in this book. But it's like, hey, you're good at this thing. You should teach it at a high school. And you're like, I had to go to school for that. Like, real education for that. I think maybe, like, maybe that's not how it works, you know? So anyway, it was cute. I liked it, but it was like, you know, it was short. It was sweet. It was a nice chance to revisit Garnet Run, but it wasn't like my favorite thing in the whole world. Okay. Then the next book I read was actually an arc. It was my very first arc, and I felt so bad because, first of all, Catherine McDonald is an angel woman. I've talked to her before on Goodreads, and I've read a couple of her Beauty and the Beast retellings. I've also read, and she does like a lot of, hold on. I'm just maneuvering around here. I like have sat entirely too much today, and my body hurts. Anyway, so she writes a lot of like fairy tale retellings, and she's awesome. She's super nice. And I read the first part, so part one of A Curse of Hope and Shadows in like January, and I liked it a lot. It struggled with some pacing and with some plotting, but it was interesting in that, like, so I like other books of hers better, but they're also less original. So like, not always, but like the two Beauty and the Beast ones I've read by her are really good. I want to reread them. But they stick pretty closely to the original narrative. Yes, there's some interesting stuff going on with like Fae and stuff like that. But this was like, A Curse of Hope and Shadows was really kind of pushing the boundaries on the whole like Beauty and the Beast curse thing. And then also it's taking like sort of Russian components. Like the characters have like sort of Russian inspired names. Or like, I guess we could say like Slavic names. So we've got like Dmitri and Alexei and different things like that. And there's some that are just not, so I don't really know. But, so I liked that book a lot, right? I liked part one a lot. But it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. And that's kind of the vibe I got from parts 2 and 3 too. I didn't get a chance to finish it on time. I felt bad about it. But she was really nice about it. But this is about, so the first book is about Adeline and Dimitri, and he is 16, she is 18. Her parents have died. She has 3 younger brothers and 2 younger sisters. Her youngest sister is like 2 years old, and she's been raped, like basically her 16-year-old brother, and then her are like the parents, basically, to all these younger siblings. And she has all this midwifery training because her mom was a midwife before she died. And so she basically becomes Dimitri's nurse. He's in pain all the time because he's basically like this like kind of horrible fused body going on because he was cursed. His father was cursed, kind of went on to him, and his father tries to break the curse and ends up, he is like merged permanently in this horrible state where like he's half beast, half human. And so he's in pain a lot because like those two parts really don't like vibe very well. And so she helps take care of him. She, bonds with him. They start like liking each other. It's really sweet. I was for some reason thrown off by the age difference. I don't know why. It's probably some super deeply ingrained like societal thing, but when you're that young, I don't know, it just bothered me. And so at the end of that book, they break the curse, surprise, sorry, and then he has to go away to school. And because his dad realizes that he's far too attached to Adeline. And so parts 2 and 3 were supposed to be 2 separate parts, but then she put them together because she was like, they're too short, let's just put them together. But I really think they should have just been one part. It's like part 1 and part 2. Because it really does feel like a full novel when you read it. not like it's two separate things. I mean, it is one novel, but there's still two parts. And so it takes place 2 years later, basically. He's coming back home. Rumors are that he's engaged to this woman. She's like, he stopped writing to her, and she wonders why. And of course, it was interference from his father, because his father's an asshole. And so this book is interesting because there are still some sort of lingering effects of the curse, not like on him, but on his life. Because, you know, his dad, like, made a deal with this enchantress so that way his wife could have another heir, and his wife died, and so he broke this word that he, you know, made to the enchantress, so he was cursed, but the blood that was given to her to sort of seal their agreement was actually his son, so he was cursed. And so anyway, it's just like this horrible, but it's interesting because Dimitri's cousin Alexei becomes king after his father and grandfather die, and so that means Dimitri is next in line. Well, his father's next in line, then Dimitri, and he comes home trying to get people off his back, so pretending that to be interested in this other girl who's actually in a relationship with her maid. It's really cute. And you also get to see Elliot, who is Adeline's, you know, younger brother, one of the younger brothers. He's now like like 17. And he's seeing Thomas, who is this guy that you meet in the first book, who's like a servant in Dimitri's house. And I called it. I was like, there's something going on here with these two. And Catherine McDonald was like, I don't know how you saw that in the first book. And I was like, because I was looking for it. I was looking. Because she's like really subtle about that kind of stuff. But I read one book by her called Kingdom of Thorns or something like that. And it was a Sleeping Beauty retelling. And there was a character in there who was gay. And I was like, I think she does a really good job of slipping that in there. Like perfectly normally. Loved it. So anyway, it was just an interesting book because it struggled so much with pacing. And so you have like a cliffhanger at the end of part 2. And then part 3 is starting with a lot of grief and a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication. And the country is in strife and there's a war and she's a nurse. And it's conceptually very interesting. In execution, like not as good as I wanted it to be. There are still beautiful lines, but it's like it was a really good idea, but it needed like some hardcore editing. Both parts. I mean, like this part 2 and 3, but also the initial book. But I gave him 4 stars because I gotta admire her trying something new. But so far I preferred a few of her other books to this series. So I gave it 4 stars, but I haven't left a review yet. Okay, last 2 books. So I finished the Hot and Hammered series by Tessa Bailey, and I talked about Fix Her Up and Love Her or Lose Her last month, and those were fine. I liked Love Her or Lose Her better than Fix Her Up. Fix Her Up gave me weird. It felt creepy. I don't know why. And those 2 books felt overly sexual. And like what I mean by that is I will listen to or read anyone doing anything. Well, I have personal things that I'm like not a huge fan of reading. As long as there's a connection between the characters and I am invested in what's going on between them. And I feel like I get to know them very well. But in Fix Her Up and in Love Her or Lose Her, I didn't feel that. And so it felt like weird and overly sexual to listen to them do all these things together when it should have been like, wow, thanks for sharing. That was excellent. But instead I was like, oh no. It just wasn't. So I was like, oh, Tessa, like, is this what people are talking about with you? Because I'm not a fan. But then in book 2, we're introduced to, Wes Daniels and then Bethany Castle. And Bethany's older brother is Stephen. He and the whole family do like this renovation thing. Her younger sister's Georgie from the first book. Her best friend is Rosie from the second book. And you meet Wes in book 2 when he moves to Port Jefferson, to take care of his like 6-year-old niece or 5-year-old niece, because the husband quit town, and then his stepsister's husband left town, and then his stepsister, who has a history of like drug abuse and things like that, and they were both in foster care growing up, so they just haven't had great experiences, but she had it worse off than him. She's like, I need a break. And so he's been in Port Jeff for a month taking care of his niece, and he and Bethany have started, when they first met, they started trading barbs, and they kind of got off on the wrong foot immediately, and he especially regrets that because he realizes that she takes everything too much to heart. She's 30 and he's 23, and she just can't get over that. And he's made a lot of remarks about her age that he doesn't mean. He like really into her, but she can't understand why he would be. And so I don't know why it worked for me. Because he's got this like drawl, and the girl who reads the book actually does a really good job. It's the same girl who's read the other two, Charlotte North or something. That's probably wrong. But I really liked Wes. And there was a miscommunication, but it wasn't as bad as in books 1 and 2. And it was fixed quickly, but it didn't feel as cheap as the fixes in books 1 and 2. And it made me like wonder if Tessa Bailey's like worth my time, because I really liked Wes and Bethany, and I really appreciated it. And Wes got me going. I was like, wait a second, this dude who wears cowboy boots and a hat, like, I am now like lusting over him. Like, okay, didn't see that coming. Like, that's not my MO, really. I don't really have an MO, but that's not it. And their scenes were just as like sort of overtly sexual as the scenes in the first 2 books. But like these characters, I felt like I knew them better. And whenever they said they felt a connection, like I could feel it too. So I believed them. Whereas in the other books, they were like, ooh, I feel this connection. And I'm like, do you though? Because I'm not feeling it either. Like, I should feel it and I should relate to you. And I should like be able to understand why you guys are into each other and like what you have, the potential and all that stuff, right? So anyway, I enjoyed this book quite a bit. Basically the plot is that Bethany wants to start her own flip because she does like the staging and the decorating for Stephen's, like his father's business, and Stephen runs it. And Bethany helps stage and decorate. And so she gets a house that's given to her by Georgie's husband, Travis, from the first book. It's his old childhood home, and she's going to renovate it. And then they get word, like a TV producer gets word about it, and they're going to call it Flip Off, which is going to be like a family like flip competition. And so it happens really fast, and Wes decides to help her instead of helping Stephen, because he's starting to see beneath all these layers and these masks that she puts on. And I just really liked it. And it was sweet. And he has a niece who's adorable and calls her Elsa. And she's great with kids, even though she doesn't feel like she is. And I thought it was valid. Like, I have a really hard time sometimes reading books where the woman is older. And I know that's ridiculous. Like, I know that. But even a couple years is weird to me. Like, when I read The Kiss Quotient, she's like 2 years older than him. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know. And it's just like, that bothers me so much. And you can tell it bothers her. And then he has to like figure out why, and she has to figure out why. And I was like, man, this is a good point. Like, I needed this book. Like, I needed to read this book. Because, like, I'm 31 now. I'm like, girl, maybe I should stop being so, like, against 23-year-olds. I don't know. It's so weird, though. I think the age thing, not personal personal foray here. I think one of the reasons it bugs me is because of like the whole teacher thing. And I know that's weird because like my students are all 16, 17, 18. But I think I'm just hypersensitive to age also because of that. And I've always just read books and watched movies where the man is older. And that's more socially acceptable, even though women live longer. So I don't know. I don't know why, but I related to Bethany a lot in that sense. And I actually really liked her character and Wes's character. They were both awesome. I really liked them. So, excuse me. Okay, then the last book I read, I just finished this today. So I read the third book so I think it's called the Splendid Trilogy or the Blyden Family Saga series, it says. I need to get that book too. Okay, so anyway, it's called Minx. And let me move this back a little bit. So it's called Minx, and these early Julia Quinn books, I talked about this last month too. It's fascinating to read them because you see shades of characters that you're going to meet later on in her books. But they're not done as well because it's like really early for her. Like this came out in 99, 96. Yeah, 95 and 96 were her first books. And so this is the third one. Right now, my favorite is still book 2, Dancing in the Moonlight. I think is what it's called. These covers are also terrible, by the way. But this one, my main complaint with her early books so far has been the pacing. It feels like the last 40, 50% of the book is like awkwardly paced. Maybe it's because the first part is rushed. I don't know. It's just all of them have struggled with the same issue, which is like we get to a certain point, we understand how the other person feels for the most part, and then we end up like fucking around and like and finding like miscommunication things, and then we solve it too soon. And what's also interesting though is that like I was reading these books at the same time for the most part that I was listening to the Tessa Bailey books on my Hoopla, and they had like weird parallels. So it would be a fascinating study to like, I listened to Fix Her Up at the same time I read the first one, which was Splendid. Very similar books, weirdly. Then I listened to Dancing in the Moonlight at the same time that I read Love Her or Lose Her. And similar also, I mean, not Marriage in Trouble, like Love Her or Lose Her, but Dancing in the Moonlight, they both have veterans who haven't quite gotten over their past yet, although Dominic in Love Her or Lose Her never really speaks of that. And then this one kind of is the kind of like awkward relationship. Wes is younger than Bethany, and this one, so that's weird for her, right? And he has a kid, kind of. He's taking care of his niece. And in this one, you have Dunford, who is, we meet him in book 1. I really like Dunford. And this girl who becomes his ward. But it's weird because, like, she's 20 and it's like he's 29. It's like she's not, like, a teenager or anything. So it's kind of a weird, awkward, like, definitional relationship. But she goes by the name of Henry because her real name is Henrietta, and it's really funny. But it felt like unnecessary complication in this book. And I don't know. I really love Julia Quinn. There are certain books that really hit the nail on the head. And then this one, I just wasn't sure about. I didn't give it 3 stars. I just wasn't sure because at the end, they just make horrible assumptions and lies and stuff. And you're just like, what is going on here? Like, why is this happening? I do want to read. There's a book that's about the brother. Bell's brother Ned. And he's in this book as well. But basic plot, Dunford inherits an baroncy? Baron something? He becomes baron. I don't know. And he inherits this estate in Cornwall. And Henrietta, was the ward of the previous baron. And so she becomes his ward, but he doesn't know that at first because he hasn't seen the will. And so they become fast friends, but then he really likes her, and so they definitely kiss. And then he finds out that she's his ward, and he's like all of a sudden overcome with propriety. And he's like, I'm gonna take you to London to like teach you how to be a woman and like find someone to do that. But then everyone's like oohing and awing over her, and he's like, ooh, I'm jealous, shit. And she's like, yeah, you're jealous, right? Like, what the fuck? And he's like, I messed up. We never should have come here. I should have just married you when we were in Cornwall. And she's like, you shoulda. And that's like the first half of the book. So the rest of it is just like, what are we doing here, Julia? What are we doing here? Anyway. So, that's where I'm at right now. Kind of general plans. I know I made a fall kind of non-TBR. But my plans are to rest of the month. I have to read this book called The Story of an African Farm. Boring, I know. But I have to read that over Thanksgiving break, probably. Probably next weekend, I don't really know. And then I really want to... There are so many good books. So my friend Jen recommended this book series that we found. Oh my god, I want to put the picture up here. So it's called Burly Tales, Fairy Tales for the Hirsute and Hefty Gay Man. She was like, Megan, I saw it and I knew that you needed to read it. And I was like, oh my god, I need it. Look at that cover. Oh my god, it's beautiful. I love this gay shit. You know I do. So that sounds so fun. And then there's a book. So she read this whole series that's like by Anita Sunday. And they're like these like Zodiac books, Signs of Love. And so they're all like Zodiac based and they're all queer romances. But there's all these other things I want to read. Like Jamie Schlosser just came out with Monster in the Moonlight. She wrote all the Fake King's Curse books, and I loved those books so much. So I want to read those. I want to read some Serena Bowen. I've never read Serena Bowen. I know that's terrible. But I also want to read some fantasy. So I don't know. I want to read the Captive Prince series again. It will be 3 years since I read it this November. Well, it's November now, so I think I read it over Thanksgiving break. I really want to read those again. I don't know. There's so much good stuff to read. There's a new Grace Raven that came out that I need to read as well. So I think it's been a good month for reading. I am trying to remember all the great things that I've read and all the fun that I've had when I think about all the stuff I need to do, like write, 2,000 words on a paper, etc. But I hope this was a better way. It's going to be like 50 minutes still, but I hope this was a better way to do a wrap up. It's kind of like my mid-month wrap up, I guess we'll call it. And then I'll do another wrap up at the end of the month with like total numbers and everything. But I'm having a great time, and I hope that you are as well. And I am really trying to maintain a presence on here. It has been very difficult with everything going on, but I appreciate your patience, and I'll see you next time. All right. Bye.